I'm Isabel.
And I'm Kel.
And this is Autism Unmasked. Welcome back to Autism Unmasked. Today we're talking about something that is probably on a lot of young people's minds around this time of year, starting and adjusting to college. College is a major transition, along with new classes, new routines, and increased independence. Students are often learning more about themselves than they ever have before. Today's guest, Emma Ferrix, joins us to share her experience of being diagnosed autistic during her freshman year of college. We talk about what that journey looked like, how her understanding of herself has changed, and the supports and strategies that helped her navigate the journey. Whether you're preparing for college yourself, supporting a student, or maybe just navigating a period of change, we hope Emma's story reminds you that there's no one right path or timeline for understanding yourself better. Now let's get into our interview. Welcome, Emma. Thanks so much for joining us today. To start, could you introduce yourself and share a little bit more about your college journey so far?
Yeah, well, I'm Emma. I am a Penn State student. I have ADHD. It's the combination of both autism and ADHD. I was diagnosed early into my college journey and have been working towards figuring out how to make college work for me. It has been a pretty rocky road with many ups and downs. I will say that I did have to withdraw at one point, and but I have since come back and continued working towards higher education.
What drew you to attend college, and what were your expectations going in?
Honestly, I think I was always destined for college. I grew up being the smart kid. I was Learning always came easy to me. My parents had both graduated from college and had actually both graduated from Penn State. Um, so it just felt like the next logical step after high school. And I feel like my expectations were that it I could just do what I did in high school, which was not really pay attention, not really do the work, and still get those straight A's. But the reality was much different.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I remember that too. Because I was also I don't know if I would say the smart kid, but I didn't put in a lot of effort and still did pretty good. And yeah, I remember that transition into college was a lot different.
Mm-hmm.
Before college, well, you did kind of answer this, but how would you describe yourself as a student and a learner?
Yeah, I honestly, the best way I can put it is that I was like a sponge. I really just absorbed information without having to put too much thought into it. I didn't really try, and I knew it was hard because it I saw my friends struggling in high school, but it just all came easy to me at that time. And yeah, so like I knew it was hard and it was hard work, but for me, it just came really easily. And being someone who didn't know that I was autistic, I was still very high masking
Mm.
at the time. And I feel that that really influenced how I learned and how I absorbed information.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
What were some of the biggest differences you noticed between high school and college life, and how did the transition feel to you?
The transition honestly hit me like a brick. It was
Mm-hmm.
really jarring. I I knew that it was going to be more difficult, but when I was actually faced with the workload, with the content, with all of it, it just it it really hit me how difficult it was. And some of the biggest differences were I had that familiarity in high school.
Mhm.
It was people I had grown up with, a place I had grown up in. Like I had moved when I was pretty young, but I basically grew up in the same spot
Mhm.
my entire childhood. So even though I had started college in my hometown, it was still very different from high school because it was a completely new environment. And
Yeah.
then there was the other transition of when I came up to Penn State, Maine, University Park, and I feel like that transition hit me harder, and I feel like there were a lot, it was a lot more of newness, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, it does. I feel like there's also like you're constantly around people. Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
you never have chance to just be by yourself. What were some of your early signs that your experience in college wasn't matching with your past academic success?
Honestly, the grades.
Mhm.
Like I've said, I was a straight A student in high school. And when I started college, I was struggling to maintain a C average. And I have since bettered, have better understood my brain and how my brain works and learns. And I feel like that was really key to figuring out how to get through this. I feel like because I had lost all sense of familiarity, like even though I had stayed at my hometown initially, because I was a 2+2 student, I started at the Beaver Branch campus. So it was still just pretty pretty difficult to do go through that transition, and I really think the grades were the biggest indicator that I was struggling.
Yeah.
Mhm. Can you walk us through your journey to being diagnosed during your freshman year?
Yeah, so I had been starting to notice that something was different about me for a few years prior. I had been seeking mental health treatment through most of high school, but not receiving it
Mhm.
until May of my senior year. And so I had been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder back in May of 23, but it it still didn't feel like that had answered all the questions.
Mhm.
And I had been talking with multiple therapists, my psychiatrist, and this one professor at the Beaver campus, who is no longer there, unfortunately. Um, but it it was really just a lot of talking it through with other people and recognizing, hey, this like neurodivergence is a possibility.
Mhm.
And so my one therapist had recommended, my outpatient therapist at the time actually had recommended the place that I ended up getting evaluated and eventually diagnosed at. And I actually ended up switching my psychiatrist to someone at that same place, and I still work with that psychiatrist to this day.
Oh, that's nice.
Um, but it was and I do recognize my privilege in how easy it was for me to
Mm,
get diagnosed, because I feel like I hear so many stories about how people have year-long wait times,
mhm,
but it had taken, so I had reached out sometime in the fall of 23. I had my intake interview with them to really discuss what my concerns were, why I was reaching out, why I was getting evaluated. That was January of 24. So this was spring of my freshman year. And I was evaluated, and we did the actual testing in February of 24, and I think I received the diagnosis either in, it was either March or April. So it was really just a few months that it
mhm,
took for me to get diagnosed. Um, yeah, because the practice was a reputable private practice that took my insurance,
mhm,
and being on pretty decent insurance thanks to my dad, it was able to be pretty painless for me. Um, However, there were definitely challenges that I faced in receiving this diagnosis, because I had struggled with my parents a lot, and I didn't let them know that I was doing this until after the fact. Um, but they did eventually find out, and I did tell them. So we got there in the end, but yeah,
Well, after you received that diagnosis, how did you feel?
relieved mostly.
Yeah.
Getting diagnosed didn't fix the problem, of course. You still have to work through it, and you still face the challenges, but it it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders of, oh my gosh, I know I, I'm not di- I'm not broken.
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm not, like, I'm different, but it's not a bad thing.
yeah,
Right. And there's other
And
people that are different
yeah,
like
and
you.
there's a community
Yeah.
with it, and it's it's just been very nice to know and to have this information. And obviously, knowing has come with its own challenges, because I was diagnosed with level 1 autism.
mm,
So there are the three levels, and with level 1, that tends to get a lot of the high masking, which
mhm,
is like the camouflaging of the autistic traits. And so I had grown up basically hiding my autism, because I was socially conditioned to follow the neurotypical rules, but
Right.
it didn't come naturally to me, which is why I kind of like have, which is kind of why I have the diagnosis, because
mhm,
it's not natural to me. Because I struggle with these things. But yeah, it's very relieving, and very, like, you have a breath of fresh air for
mhm,
the first time, and it's just very nice to have that definitive answer.
Yeah.
mhm,
That's a good way of putting it. I like that.
yeah. How did the people around you respond when you shared your diagnosis, if you chose to share with them?
Honestly, I am pretty open about my autism.
Mhm,
I I really like knowing, and I like I personally really like knowing and having a name to put to it because it gives me a sense of control and understanding. And most people were very accepting and it went over very well. However, the only person that I did have an issue with was when I told my mom. I had sat her down with one of my, it was actually the school therapist at Penn State Beaver at the time. And I had brought her in. I will say I did kind of blindside her. I didn't really give her much of a heads up, which was bad on me, and I do recognize that. But I was very scared to tell her because I was gonna be destroying the perfect child image that she
Mhm.
had in her head of who I was. And I think a lot of people, especially older people who don't quite know what autism is or how it presents, they, because I've even taught, even with the professor I was talking to and continue to talk to, um, she had said that like growing up, autism meant that it was like the 5-year-old nonverbal boy.
Right.
And that's what autism meant. And it was the severe case, it wasn't the level one.
Right.
And I think that's still the image my mom held in her head,
Right.
unfortunately. And so when I told her, it was basically 2 hours of nuh-uh, no one asked me because because I was 18 when I had gotten diagnosed and evaluated and diagnosed, I didn't need my parents to have their input
Yeah.
uh, because I was an adult. And
Right.
so my mom, I think, felt very left out. And I do like understand and feel bad. However, I think I would do it the same way
Mhm.
just because I did hold that fear and we've since grown. I there obviously we still have our issues and butt heads time to time, but I feel like she's more understanding and trying to learn more about autism and accept it, which is nice. But yeah, initially it was a very negative response from her.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you grew past that.
Yeah.
She did too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think especially because, you were 18, like you said, uh, having that feeling of like being able to do it by yourself
Mm-hmm.
is a really good feeling to have. I remember I went
Yeah.
through a similar thing with getting um like anxiety disorder diagnosis, and my parents were like, "Oh, it's just everybody has anxiety."
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
but yeah, it was a similar sort of thing. It was actually my freshman year of college too. Um
Yeah.
Yeah.
they get used to it eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually.
I literally had the same problem where, like, all of middle school and high school, I was like, Mom, Dad, I want to see a psychologist. And
Yeah.
they were like, No, you're just dealing
Yeah.
with typical teen angst. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not, though." So
Yeah,
then
that
the second I got to
actually,
college, I was like,
Like, okay.
Let me in the psychiatry office. Help.
yeah, it actually, the only reason it wasn't college when I was first diagnosed, even though it was almost college,
Yeah.
when I was first diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder, it was because my brother had faced um, some pretty serious mental health issues himself. And that's really what snapped my parents into, oh, this is an actually serious thing that we need to
Yeah.
like address. But yeah, it really did take a lot
Yeah.
for them to be open to it.
Yeah. Switching gears a little bit, after your diagnosis, what adjustments did you begin to make academically or personally?
I feel like I mostly started with academics.
Mhm.
The one professor that I was in communication with was actually my academic advisor who had taken on the student disability resource position in the spring of my freshman year. So she was the person that I had to give my paperwork to so that I could receive accommodations. And I had started with just the 50% extended time and the use of the school provided testing center.
Mhm.
Um, I've since added a many more. I have a lot of flexibility accommodations now. I have a note-taking assistance accommodation, and I have if I were to have been on a meal plan, I would have received accommodations for my RFID,
Mhm.
but because I did not um, go through with using a meal plan and have chosen to buy groceries instead because I live off campus and that's an option for me.
Right.
Um, so I would have access to that if I so chose, but just with my situation, it didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so it's really just like I feel like personally, it's been a lot of making realistic goals
Mhm.
and keeping it realistic.
Mhm.
It's like I was always aware of the issues like my executive functioning problems, but honestly, honestly, being aware of it kind of makes it worse because
Mhm.
you know about it and you're actively thinking about it.
Right.
And so when you try to like go do something and your brain is going, I want to do this, I need to do this,
Yeah.
why can't I do
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
It's just like, well, I know why I can't do this. So how do we work around it?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I really had others start holding me accountable, which was a major help. Um, I don't really rely on my parents much just because I feel like I still hold, even though I'm 21, I feel like I still hold some of that teenage like rebellion of I don't want to listen to you, mom and dad.
Yeah.
But but professor the professor that I was talking to and who has really helped me in a lot of facets. She was one of the main people who I would have hold me accountable. And it was honestly not like, it wasn't like she was actively like, have you done X, Y, and Z? It was more so she was just kind of there and I don't know. It because I would spend so much time in her office, especially during my second year of college, and like just having another person present
Mhm.
makes had made it easier to go about doing things. And
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think that's what I was missing when I had first transitioned up to University Park because I didn't have that any person to be that external holding me accountable. Like, I almost need that external pressure to get going, even if the other person doesn't have those expectations placed is even if the other person isn't placing those expectations on me themselves,
Hmm.
I in my mind they are, and
Right.
that is enough for me to get started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is honestly really worked for me, and even now I'm doing that. My current academic advisor is being that person for me, and I'm doing a lot better in school. Like, when I had first transitioned to University Park, I didn't have that person yet, and I had to withdraw because it was that bad.
Hmm.
And now I'm passing my classes, and I'm doing better. And it's really interesting to see the difference, I
Yeah, that's
guess.
awesome. It's really I'm happy to hear that too, that you
Hmm.
feel you're doing better. College is stressful no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
uh,
So you did touch on this, but are there any other supports, accommodations, or resources through college that you want to highlight or shout out?
Well, honestly, I had actually started with concussion accommodations before I had received academic accommodations. So that was really my introduction to what what even is an accommodation.
Right.
And I honestly, I have to shout her out. Professor Oberg was my biggest academic support. She's the one I keep going back to, the one who was at Penn State Beaver. Um, but she was the one who got me started with my academic accommodations. Um, yeah, and what I had started with, I had mentioned, but um, actually, I have all of my accommodations written down, so I'll just run through them real quick.
Okay.
So I think it's interesting because I want to highlight what
is
can people
available.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So
important.
what I do have is I have 50% extended time on quizzes and exams. I can use the SDR testing center, or I am entitled to a less distracting environment for testing. I have my note taking assistants. I can use noise canceling headphones during exams and quizzes. I have flexibility in my attendance.
Hmm.
I have flexibility in assignment deadlines and flexibility in rescheduling exams and quizzes. And a lot of this, and I will say some of this is more because of some of my other diagnoses, but I feel a lot of autistic people have a lot of similar diagnoses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these accommodations could be open to whoever,
Yeah.
like within reason. If
Yeah.
it if it will help you, I think it is important to advocate for and ask and see if it's possible,
Yeah.
because and honestly a lot of my accommodations came from because I did start with only two and have since now have a laundry list of them. But a lot of them just come from personal experience of what what challenges did I face? What would be helpful to get around that? And like, given this difficulty, how can you still do well in school?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I feel like I appreciate like uh, I t- I don't know the right word for how I feel, but I really I really appreciate that I can have these accommodations and that I get to be accommodated. And if if I wouldn't have been diagnosed and if I wouldn't have gone after it, I don't think I would be in the same position. I feel, and I even with the diagnoses, I had to withdraw still. And so it's really just figuring out your brain and how it works and just figuring out yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we kind of went over strategies. But are there any other specific strategies that have helped you with navigating studying or any sensory or social challenges in college?
I really, it's
No.
why I'm laughing is because the biggest one was going to Professor Oberg's office.
Hmm.
She navigating classes because I can't go home in between classes,
Okay.
otherwise I won't go back to school, is
Yeah.
what I have found. So I now I have to find alternative spaces, but at the time it was Professor Oberg's office. And but I will go to a specific place, and that I will make that my place, and I will keep going back. And before class, after class, in between classes, I go to one place, and that's where I get my studying done. That's where I get my homework done. That's where I make sure that place is a place that it can be sensory except like good for my sensory needs.
Yeah.
Because and honestly, like genuinely every single like navigating the classes, studying, sensory, social challenges, all of them, I figure like all of them were solved by going to Professor Oberg's office because she was a very popular person on campus and a lot of students went to her for comfort and for that sense of like safety on campus. And so because a lot of people were like coming to the Center for Academic Achievement, which is where Professor Oberg's office was, I was getting a lot of socialization.
Hmm.
And she was introducing me to new people and putting me out there, even when I didn't necessarily want to be, but I still appreciate her for doing it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I really think what helped me the most was finding a spot, making it your spot, making sure it's a place that you are comfortable in, your senses aren't going to be overwhelmed. Like, but yeah, just find your spot is
Yeah.
my advice.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. How can professors or university staff create a more supportive and inclusive learning environment?
Listen to the students. Just honestly, that's really all you need. Give them a safe space, give them a safe person. Students, in my experience, need that safety net, need that, just need heard. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like it, when you're actually listening to them, you can make changes to better accommodate them because you know what the actual because you heard them out because and when they're given a safe space they are comfortable enough to tell you what's wrong.
Right.
And again, Professor Oberg. I love her.
That's
But
awesome though. Like
yeah.
I feel like having a professor or teacher that you feel like comfortable with is helpful for a lot of people. Um,
Yeah. And like
and like a space.
even yeah, and even now, like I would say my current academic advisor is now filling that role. But I feel like definitely just if more staff adopted those same characteristics
Yeah.
of just being open to hearing what students have to say and
Yeah.
not thinking that students are cheating because they're using accommodations, not
Right.
thinking that students are getting special treatment. It's not special treatment. It's lifting students up. It's lifting neurodivergent students up to the same place that neurotypical students are already at.
Right. Yeah.
So if I were to like visualize it for you two, it would be like neurotypical students are generally up here, neurodivergent students are at a disadvantage. And it's just the accommodations lift you up so it's an even playing field.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah.
How has your understanding of yourself evolved since freshman year?
Honestly, it's evolved a lot. Like, I, because when I started, like, I didn't even have the diagnoses yet,
Right.
and I didn't know the problem. And now I do know the problem, and I know how to face it. And every every semester I've faced new challenges, and they all kind of stem back to the same patterns of, for me, I struggle a lot with avoidance,
Hmm.
as given by the avoidant eating disorder, where avoidant is literally in the
Hmm.
name. But um but I feel like I've been given, like, I as I get older and as I continue to grow, I face I'm trying to think of how to say this best. Like, as I get older, I can recognize what has worked and what hasn't. Have been able to do trial and error. I have been able to test different things, see what works. And honestly, the big thing that has worked for me is finding my person.
Mhm.
And at the Penn State Beaver campus, again, it was Professor Oberg, and now it's my current academic advisor. But it's really just finding someone, at least for me, it was finding someone. And it's just really like, it's really interesting to like look back and see how much I've grown and see how I've evolved, because I really have.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So I think it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Especially in college when you're away and in a completely different environment. I feel
Yeah.
like,
Are there strengths you now recognize in yourself that you didn't before?
Um, I I struggle to answer this one. I know that I do have my strengths, and know I know that they're there, but it's really hard to accept that they're there and to recognize what they are. And but I feel like my resilience is honestly one of my big ones,
Mhm.
because no matter what I faced and no matter what challenges have come from my diagnoses, I continue to keep going and to keep pushing, because it's, for example, when was I was only diagnosed with ARFID, which for those who don't know is avoidant f restrictive food intake disorder. And I was only diagnosed back in February of this year. And it was like the beginning of my spring semester. I had just come off of having to withdraw, and I was still really passionate and set on going through school, staying in school, finishing and getting my degree. And that's still something that's really important for me. And I I think that the fact that I was able to seek help and seek treatment and continue to uh, work through school, because I had joined I had been diagnosed at the end of February. I was hospitalized a week after um a week after spring break,
Mm-hmm.
because I had basically not eaten or drank water for that week prior, which is not the best. I wouldn't recommend doing it.
Yeah, of course.
It sounds like it wouldn't be
But
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then I started, so that was like mid to end of March, and I had started in an a virtual intensive outpatient program um in, in early April, and that went on until end of May, mid to end of May. And so I was doing the IOP while in school, and I feel like the resilience really shined through
Yeah.
in that sense. And I feel like the fact that I keep trucking and keep going,
Yeah.
I'm really proud of myself for it. And I really appreciate that people didn't give up on me, because I
Yeah.
was giving up on myself.
Yeah.
And and even though and I don't want to say I was completely giving up on myself, because I was the one who put myself into the IOP.
Yeah.
I I was putting in the work, and I didn't want to do it, but I knew I needed to fix what I was doing and change what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that on my own, so I had to seek that extra help. But yeah,
Yeah. I think you should be really proud of yourself. It
Yeah,
seems
absolutely.
a long journey to go through.
yeah.
What advice would you give to autistic students who are about to start college?
I want to warn them that it will be hard, and to not rush it, to remember to take care of yourself. I know I was just praising my resilience, but if I would have, especially in the fall, if I would have just recognized, hey, this isn't working, something's not right earlier on, I think I think I would have been in a different position. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not how it played out, unfortunately. And I really wish I did take more time with myself to figure out, okay, we're living on our own for the first time. We're in charge of getting to school, getting yourself fed, doing all the things. But yeah, it just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Don't rush it. Take care of yourself and enjoy it.
What advice would you give to parents or educators supporting autistic college students?
They're gonna mess up.
Right.
Just help them pick up the pieces and move on. Don't dwell on or shame the mistakes that are made. The
Right.
Yeah.
autistic students are gonna do that enough themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I did that plenty myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I, what Professor Oberg gave to me was a space where I wasn't being judged and where I wasn't being shamed. And every time I made a mistake, it was, okay, how can we move on? How can we keep going? It
Yeah.
wasn't this, how dare you? This is so bad. Why did you do this?
Mhm.
And I think their first instinct is often to yell at or be upset with or
Mhm.
share the negative emotions, but I really advise against that because it's not what's needed. It's not what's going to fix the issue.
Right.
The issue already happened. Just
Yeah.
pick up the pieces and move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And learn from it.
Yeah.
If you could go back and talk to yourself at the start of your freshman year, what would you say?
Honestly, I would go back to that. Don't rush it and take
Yeah.
care of yourself.
Yeah.
Listen to your needs because I really struggled with that of listening to myself
Right.
and recognizing where my limits were, especially as someone who has started to unmask their autism. I, as, because the more you know about the autism, especially when masking is so unconscious, at least it was for me,
Right.
when you know and you're actively like thinking about it, you're recognizing, oh, well, this is a situation where I would have done this in the past, but that's not gonna work anymore
Right.
because you're autistic and you're not hiding it.
Right.
Is there anything you'd like listeners, especially autistic students, to take away from your story?
You're not alone. It's gonna feel like it, but being autistic means that you have a community. Find that community, get the help before you need it,
Mhm.
because after the fact, it's going to be too late and you're going to be struggling to pick up the pieces and keep going. And it's just going to, you're going to be hit by a train,
Yeah.
really. At
Yeah.
least that was my experience.
Mhm.
But you'll figure it out. It'll be hard and it'll there will be challenges, but don't give up and know that you're not the only person going through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Emma,
Yeah,
for talking with us today.
of course.
I think your experience in college is really relatable, and I feel like a lot of people, this will help make them feel a little less alone, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, of course.
Emma's experience was really inspiring to hear. I think her journey highlights something so many people need to hear, that struggling doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it just means you're learning more about what you need to succeed. Also, getting a diagnosis doesn't change who you are, but it can provide understanding and access to supports that make life easier. We hope today's conversation helps listeners feel a little less alone in their journey. If you'd like to learn more about transitioning to college, self-advocacy, accommodations, or other resources for autistic students and adults, check the episode description for links from ASSERT. You can also find additional resources anytime at paautism.org. Autism Unmasked is brought to you by the ASSERT Collaborative, which is funded by the Office of Developmental Programs within the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services. Emma's experience was really inspiring to hear. I think her journey highlights something so many people need to hear, that struggling doesn't mean you failed. Sometimes it just means you're learning more about what you need to succeed. Also, getting a diagnosis doesn't change who you are, but it can provide understanding and access to supports that make life easier. We hope today's conversation helps listeners feel a little less alone in their journey. If you'd like to learn more about transitioning to college, self-advocacy, accommodations, or other resources for autistic students and adults, check the episode description for links from ASSERT. You can also find additional resources anytime at paautism.org.